Velvet shadow still lies many untold tales ahead. Once more on a Thursday night she spoke, halting me in my tracks. It wasn't her words, but her delivery that halted me. She seemed to be elsewhere before I completed my question. "Not in the mood, Marcus," she replied, standing at the mirror, removing her earrings, still clad from the event she had attended. The hour was nearing midnight, and our apartment reeked of cigarettes and someone else's bar. On the bed's edge, I remained in my Uber jacket, undiscarded shoes still on my feet. Fresh off a 12-hour shift, I sought nothing extraordinary, merely asking if we were still together. She placed her earrings on the counter and walked past me to the kitchen. For a moment, I stayed there, gazing at the bathroom light she left burning. The countertop was wet near the sink. Her makeup bag lay half open. All seemed ordinary, which disturbed me. I extinguished the light and retired to bed. This was our third such encounter that week. I continued counting, having already known the outcome I intended to hide. In the morning, she was absent before I awoke. A half-cold pot of coffee sat on the counter, accompanied by a note that read, "Busy day, no need to wait up." I disposed of the coffee and initiated the Uber app. At that point, I'd been driving nights for approximately 2 years. From Bushwick to Midtown, then back to Brooklyn, and again to Midtown, this was my routine. A city is experienced differently through the lens of a car late at night. It reveals what people are truly doing when they believe no one is watching. Lindsay and I had been married for 4 years. We crossed paths when she managed events for a small agency in Chelsea, while I worked days for a courier company. Back then, she'd call me during her lunch break just to hear my voice. The Bushwick apartment was ours 3 years ago, a decision we labeled as temporary. When she relocated to PR, the routine, activities, and even after-work social events altered. I chose not to make a fuss because she was constructing something, and I acknowledged her efforts. I took on additional night shifts to compensate for the reduction in rent when her agency reduced hours during the spring. We ceased sharing dinner around October. I observed but remained silent about it. What I convinced myself was, this is just a challenging phase. Every couple experiences them. You persevere. What I didn't express openly was that she no longer looked at me with the affection she once did. Not angrily or coldly, just indifferently, as if I were familiar furniture she had grown accustomed to. The week of the sticky note, I began noticing subtle changes. She always took a shower immediately upon returning home every night. I chose not to address the issue, but instead filed it away and acted. Instead of asking, I initiated actions, small gestures. I was attempting to repair a leak without knowing the pipe's location, just as I booked a table at an Italian restaurant in Carroll Gardens that she had recommended during summer. It wasn't fancy. It was merely somewhere she had pointed out and said, "We should try this someday." I sent her a text about it on a Tuesday afternoon. She replied 4 hours later saying, "This week is hectic. Can we reschedule?" I agreed. I canceled the reservation. Instead, I prepared groceries and cooked her favorite meal, chicken marsala, which she usually requested for her birthday on a Friday. When she arrived home at 11:15, the food was already cold. She ate it standing at the counter while scrolling her phone, claiming it was good before going to take a shower. I remained in the kitchen and listened as the water ran. On Saturday morning, I proposed we walk over to Prospect Park together, leaving our phones behind. However, she said she needed to prepare for a Monday presentation and retreated into the bedroom with her laptop. I went alone and walked nearly 2 hours. Returned home, found her on the couch engrossed in something on her phone with earphones plugged in. Didn't raise her gaze as I entered. That night I spent hours beside her in the dark, fixing my eyes on the ceiling. Her phone glowed on the nightstand. She grabbed it swiftly, more quickly than I had observed in months. I refrained from peeking at the screen. Almost did, but held back. She read whatever was there, placed the phone face down, and simply mentioned, "Work matters," without my prompting. Then she turned onto her side, distancing herself from me, and within 10 minutes her breathing became slow, as if she had dozed off. I remained there for another hour. The following evening, she informed me of an event in the Lower East Side. A skincare brand launch party. She said, "Rooftop venue. The client will be present. She'll likely be late." I nodded. She kissed me on the cheek before leaving, which she hadn't done for a while, and I recall thinking that it should have improved my mood. It didn't. Drove for a shift till 1 in the morning, then ended my day. On the way home, I unintentionally passed through LES. I wasn't seeking anything. That's what I convinced myself. I slowed down on Delancey and checked the rooftops automatically. No signs of a party, no crowd sounds, nothing indicating a launch event. It could have been anywhere, could have ended earlier. I continued driving. But the next morning, I looked at the agency's Instagram while she was showering. They post everything: events, activations, dinners with clients. I scrolled back 3 days. No posts about a skincare brand, no posts about a rooftop. No posts about Lower East Side. I set my phone aside and listened to the water running. This time I counted how long she was in there. 18 minutes. 3 nights later, I got a request at 11:47 pickup on Avenue B, Alphabet City, drop-off in Bushwick. I nearly ignored it. My acceptance rate was low that week, and I needed the fare. I clicked confirm and viewed the route. It was familiar. I had dropped passengers there before. It's a block with 5-story walk-ups and corner convenience stores. Loud until 3 in the morning. There was nothing peculiar about the address. 2 minutes away, I spotted her on an unfamiliar building stoop, laughing at something. Her jacket only partially on, hair styled from being in a warm place for hours. She resembled herself from 2 years ago, effortless and carefree, as if the world held no burdens. Then the door behind her opened and a tall man stepped out, wearing a dark shirt. He possessed an easy assurance that comes with working a crowd every night for years. He handed her a scarf, and when she took it, he pulled her back gently by the wrist and kissed her. The kiss lasted long enough that she placed her hand on his chest and didn't retreat. I was parked at the curb with my hazards activated, and when she saw the Uber logo on my windshield, she looked at me. Her expression altered, not remorseful, but something more deliberate, more like realization. She remained still. I didn't open the door. For approximately 5 seconds, we only exchanged gazes through the glass. Then I tapped cancel, pulled away from the sidewalk, and drove off. She tried calling me twice before I reached the bridge, but both times I let it ring and continued driving. Not because I was making a choice then, but rather because I didn't have any words at that moment. Oddly enough, my hands were steady on the wheel, something I wasn't expecting given the situation. I didn't tremble, I just felt distinctly clear. It was like the stillness at 4 in the morning when the city quiets down and it's only you, the road, and the stark truth. I drove for nearly an hour. No fares, no app, just traveling. Around 1:30, I parked in a lot by the waterfront in Red Hook and stayed there with the engine running. The river was dark. A barge was passing slowly on the opposite side. My phone flashed. This time it was a text message. I can clarify, please return home. I read it once. Placed the phone on the front seat, face down, and waited another 20 minutes. Upon arriving home, she was already there, seated on the couch with her coat on, in a dimly lit room. She began speaking before I even shut the door, discussing how things had spiraled out of control, not intending for it to progress this far, and how I wasn't around much anyway. I remained in the doorway, listening to the entire conversation. I then moved to the kitchen, drank a glass of water, and said, I'm heading to bed. Marcus, we need to discuss this, not tonight. I retreated to the bedroom and closed the door. I couldn't sleep. Instead, I contemplated my next move. The following day, I called in sick using an app and drove to the bar, not for a fight, but to witness the reality, the physical location and layout, as I can explain, is only effective if one doesn't scrutinize too closely. I was familiar with the address. 2 nights prior, Lindsay carelessly left her phone on the kitchen counter during her shower. The screen illuminated, revealing a bar's name in a notification. Only the name appeared. No other details. I sought out its location. Ludlow Street, Lower East Side. These hints were enough. The bar was one of those narrow, dimly lit establishments with brick walls visible even during daytime. A chopping board outside displaying daily specials. Closed, naturally, but I could peer inside through the window. Stools lined up at the counter, neat rows of bottles suggesting routine over personality. I lingered there for around 2 minutes, long enough. On my way back to the car, my phone rang. An unknown number. I accepted the call. It was him. His voice was composed, bordering on friendly, as if he was accustomed to such conversations. He informed me that Lindsay had given him my number earlier that day, saying it might be beneficial for us to talk. He mentioned that things had become intricate and he didn't want anyone getting hurt. I inquired about one thing, duration. He didn't immediately respond, but during that pause I gathered all the information I required. Approximately 4 months, he eventually confirmed. I ended the call. I stayed in the car for a while with both hands on the steering wheel and the engine turned off. Over a period of several months, I traced my thoughts back to where they would inevitably land. Instead of heading home immediately, I drove to a diner on Atlantic Avenue that I had frequented since before Lindsay, before Bushwick. Before all this, in the corner booth, with mediocre coffee, a waitress named Carol who never inquired about my well-being because she was already aware. I ordered eggs I didn't consume and sat there for 2 hours with a legal pad I retrieved from the glove compartment. I jotted down 3 items, the lease, the joint account, and the deposit. Although both our names were on the Bushwick lease, I had been the one making the payments each month for the past year while her agency reduced hours, and she claimed to be recovering. The initial deposit was $1,500, which I had put in before we even moved into the apartment. Pete, the landlord, had my contact information saved since the boiler incident last winter. We spoke only a few times. He was direct in our conversations, and I assumed he would be just as upfront about this matter, too. I phoned him from the parking lot of a diner. I informed him that I needed to modify the lease agreement. I made my request clearly without disclosing specifics. He inquired if there were any problems. I replied that circumstances had shifted, and I required my name to be withdrawn. Following this, I requested whether he would consider applying the deposit towards my final month's rent to avoid losing money. I left him a message saying I'd send over the necessary documents by the end of the week. Upon arriving home, I walked past Lindsay in the living room without stopping and went directly to the bedroom closet. I retrieved my duffel bag from the top shelf and placed it open on the bed. She appeared in the doorway and asked what I was doing, to which I didn't respond immediately. One by one, I removed my work shirts from the hangers and neatly placed them in the bag methodically. It was a motion devoid of debate or contention, as if the decision had been made beforehand. "Marcus, engage with me. I am communicating with you. This is my communication." She entered the room, standing between me and the closet, her arms folded. However, her eyes betrayed a new emotion, no longer anger or defensiveness, but something closer to fear. "You're not acting rationally. You witnessed what transpired, but you lack the full understanding of the situation. I spoke to Lindsay about it, which silenced her. I removed my jacket from the hook on the back door. He had been informing me for months. I can pinpoint the exact moment it began. I recall that week distinctly because it was the week I took on 3 additional shifts to help with the electric bill. She said nothing. I partially zipped the bag. I surveyed the room once. Not a moment of sentimentality, just practicality, ensuring I had everything necessary. My charger. Storage unit key, documents folder from nightstand drawer, these are what I grabbed before leaving. "Where are you headed? Doesn't concern you." "Marcus," she called out. "I'll be gone by Thursday." I picked up my bag and headed for the front door. She trailed behind me into the hallway, halting at the kitchen threshold as if it were a boundary she dared not cross. I opened the door. "Guess that's it then. You're cutting ties?" I cast a glance at her one last time. There we were in our apartment, standing beneath the light that we had selected from a flea market in Williamsburg 2 years prior. Then I stepped out and closed the door behind me. My phone vibrated in my pocket before I made it to the elevator, a message from her, sent before I had even reached the lobby. "You're making a mistake. You'll regret this." I read it beside the mailboxes. Afterward, I slipped the phone into my coat pocket and stepped out of the building. I stayed with my friend Ray in Crown Heights for 3 nights. He asked few questions, which proved wise. He granted me his couch, an extra key, and a 6-pack left on the counter without uttering a word. That sufficed. Throughout the day I drove, as well as at night when sleep eluded me. The city appeared identical from behind the wheel, the same roads, the same commuters, the recurring cycle of bars closing and hospitals remaining open. It provided solace. The motion was the only comfort. On Wednesday, I emailed Pete the lease paperwork. He confirmed that the deposit covered last month's rent by the end of the day. My account was settled. No debts remained unpaid, no belongings left behind. That very afternoon, I returned to the apartment when I knew she would be at work. With my key in hand, I collected the remaining items, 2 boxes and another bag. I transported them to the car over 2 trips, totaling 40 minutes. On the kitchen counter, I placed the spare key next to the coffee maker. I glanced back at the apartment one last time from the doorway. The hall light from the flea market was still on. She had not turned it off. I kept it turned on, then shut the door. On Thursday evening, she texted, "Are we over now?" I pondered over my response for a while before replying. "You haven't been coming home. I ceased expecting you." I sent it off, placed the phone face down on Ray's coffee table, and left it there throughout the night. However, a new message greeted me in the morning, dispatched at 2:17 a.m. It appears he doesn't want me back either. I read it standing in Ray's kitchen in my socks, waiting for my coffee to brew. Early sunlight filtered through the window above the sink. The garbage truck was moving down the street outside. I read it again. Then I put the phone on the counter and poured my coffee. I considered typing a response but had several options. Instead, I stood there, sipped my coffee, watched the changing light on buildings across the street, and suddenly none of those words felt important anymore. I decided not to reply, neither that day nor the following one. After leaving a message for Reed, I focused on constructing a coherent life without her. Acquired a room through Ray's acquaintance in Bed-Stuy month to month, nothing extravagant. The room faced east, providing morning light. Purchased a coffee maker, dishes, and a neutral shower curtain. Small possessions that were solely mine. 3 weeks later, while on a night shift, I was on the BQE and realized I hadn't checked Reed's Instagram for days. Hadn't made any counts or calculations about what went wrong or when. I simply drove. The following notification arrived: a pickup in Williamsburg, a drop-off near the park. I accepted the request and turned onto the lane. The flea market where we had purchased that lamp was just 2 blocks to my left, but I didn't look. If you are still here, thank you. It's your turn now. Share your thoughts below. The tales will be told soon.